Well, the World Economic Forum begins today in Davos in Switzerland. So joining us now, direct from Davos, is Arise business correspondent, Rotus Odirri. Rotus, what has the atmosphere been like for day one at Davos 2023?
How you doing, Oliver? Good to be with you. Yeah, the atmosphere from a security standpoint has been tense. There's been a lot of security. Now, to put to get an understanding of that, the COVID pandemic impacted Davos 2021 and of course Davos 2020. So this is the first physical meetup for the 53rd annual forum since the pandemic. So there's been an absolute deluge of people here, from media to high-level dignitaries, and so security has been really, really tight. I'm talking fully armed guards all over the Alps, helicopters in the air, monitoring movement. It's pretty tense from a security standpoint. Also, there's also the fact that COVID is still very much a reality. We've all had to take COVID tests here. Every single person that has attended Davos 2023 has had to take a COVID test before they're allowed onto each of the sessions. And then also there have been protests. I mean, climate activists blocked a private jet from getting from landing as a result of them being, well, still criticizing the fact that with all these high-level dignitaries flying in private, these private jets are impacting the climate. And so, now, by the way, the World Economic Forum is not, out of touch with respect to climate. That is one of their main points of discussion here. And so that's still very much top of the agenda. But from day one, high-level security, COVID still very much a concern, and activists still saying that, well, the rich and famous are not paying as much attention to the climate as they should because they're still using private jets in here.
Right, so let's dig even deeper into the substance. Ahead of the forum, the World Economic Forum released a report saying that the world is facing a polycrisis of sorts. What factors support that view?
Well, I think there's about 3 or 4 of them. So it's multiple crises from all angles. The theme for this 53rd annual World Economic Forum is dialogue in a fragmented dialogue in a fragmented world. So the fragmentation, of course, is coming from the geopolitical concerns, one of which, of course, mainly caused by the invasion of Ukraine from Russia. So that's one. You've also got the fact that there is income inequality has not been headed off as much as they would like. Income inequality is still a very serious issue that they've not been able to tamper down on. And then you've got the high level of rising cost of living, which of course is being behind, inflationary pressures that is impacting much of the world. I mean, Kristalina Georgieva, who is the managing director of the International Monetary Fund, said that 1/3 of the world is going to fall into recession, much of Europe. So you've got, geopolitical concerns. You've got, climate as well, as I just mentioned with the activists. So you've got climate, you've got skyrocketing cost of living, you've got an inability to tamper down on income inequality, and of course the fear, the big R word, recession. Those are the factors that have fueled that report that was put out ahead of the meeting of Davos, and is going to be front and center with all the sessions, about 450 sessions that will be taking place this week.
Sounds like there are some dark clouds there on the horizon, a variety of different issues. So what are the economic concerns facing North America, for example, that will concern delegates at Davos?
Well, I mean, that's the largest economy in the world, right? And so one of the concerns, of course, is that if there is a slowdown in the United States, well, that trickles through to the rest of the global economy. Inflationary concerns are right up there, although I think we had 6 consecutive decelerations with inflation, where I think the most recent number was 6.5% for November, I believe. So pretty much we've had inflation, decelerating, and that's been encouraged. But the main concerns are that if there is a recession in the United States, that flows through, and there's contagon. So if you look at the global deal making in 2021, it came out to $5.7 trillion, mostly pushed by corporates in the United States. However, there was about a 38% drop in 2022. In the first half of the year, global deal making was about $2.2 trillion. Second half of 2022, it fell to 1.4. That's the biggest swing that we've seen these records were kept in 1980. So if you've got corporates that are pulling back, you've got a lot of layoffs in the tech sector, there are worries. But there's some, I guess, maybe silver lining here and there that inflationary pressures are coming down or decelerating, and that the U.S. consumer is feeling a bit optimistic, and maybe the Fed doesn't tighten as much as it should. So that's going to concern delegates here this week as far as the United States, North America is concerned.
So the forum, of course, happens in Europe. There's a huge European representation there, at the various different sessions. What are the Europeans concerned about?
Well, the Europeans are also facing high energy costs, although the silver lining there is that recently we've seen energy prices kind of come down to pre-Ukraine, Russia-Ukraine invasion levels. Now, the energy crisis, cost of living crisis in the United Kingdom, for instance, is one big issue. Also, Russia having to as far as not having to depend as much on, I said Russia, excuse me, Europe not having to depend as much on Russia for energy is one of the main concerns here, and being able to decouple itself from Russia. So that is going to depend a lot on liquefied natural gas imports from other nations, from Qatar, from even Nigeria and elsewhere. So it's energy, energy, energy. And of course, with high energy prices, I know we're going to come to Asia in a second, with China reopening and increasing demand for energy, because China is one of the largest energy consumers on the globe. That, of course, is going to have inflationary pressure for Europe, which, of course, would probably push the European Central Bank into tightening and raising interest rates, which will also impact corporates and households here. So it's inflationary pressure, it's energy costs. That's also the big concerns for the
Rotus, my friend, you've read my mind. Tell us, what are the concerns amongst the Asian delegates there at the World Economic Forum in Davos?
So it's all about China, and there's two sides to this. China, of course, is facing, record COVID infections, and of course, as I mentioned, everyone here has had to take a COVID test, and you've got, I think, Italy, the United States, a couple other nations that have had to put restrictions on Chinese travelers. China has said that they would retaliate. African nations, noticeably, have not placed any restrictions on China with respect to COVID infections. Nigeria, most notably, had a spike recently, but maybe that's because of how indebted African nations are to China. So China has reopened. The Xi Jinping's zero COVID policy, he has retracted on that. So with a reopening of the China's economy, as I said, for Europe, there is going to be increase in demand with respect to energy. That is going to support energy prices, and particularly energy exporters as far as the energy commodities like oil are concerned. Also, Chinese tourists spent, I think, about $235 billion on travel and so on in 2019. So if you have a reopening with China, you have the economy opening up. I've seen some projections for economic growth to return to 5.5, 5.6% levels, which is good. However, there's the COVID side, where if you're reopening, you're having a spike in infections, that could actually impact the rest of the world. So that's what is really concerning the delegates here, as far as the Asian nations are concerned, and particularly China, which is the second largest economy in the world after the United States.
Right. Well, here at Arise News, we'll be covering all that's going on in Davos throughout the week, live with you on the ground there. Will you be speaking with any dignitaries while you're in Davos?
Yes, fingers crossed we are, because I ran into Zainab Ahmed, the Minister of Finance here for Nigeria. She ran into her here. Also ran into Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Director General of the World Trade Organization. Trade is going to be a big topic here as well. So we're hoping to talk to them, have in-depth interviews with them, and hopefully to run into some other delegates as well.
Arise News' man on the ground in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum 2023, Rotus Odirri. Thanks very much.